Okay, great. Well, I think you guys have all seen this. I think, probably all of you guys there. Jeff, not sure if you're there, but this is, basically a platform, a learning community that I set up. And this is going to be where I host a bunch of knowledge, just stuff that I'm offering, for anybody to come look at, no cost. And you're going to find that predominantly in this classroom area. And I'm adding stuff in there constantly. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about and use today. And, we'll talk about the learning framework, and then we'll talk about strategic planning. Basically my goal is that anybody can go there, anybody who joins, and we don't let everybody in. It's going to be a curated group, but that you'd be able to go in there and have a whole community of people that are aligned about, the real estate development business, learning how to do it, early career, mid transition, people who are, sorry, my computer keeps doing something weird. For people who are looking to, do like a transition from, investing into real estate development. This has been a
We can't hear you, Scott. Lost the mic. Scott, I can't hear you.
Can't hear either.
Still can't hear.
Okay, how about now?
Yep.
Okay.
It's back.
Wow, that was crazy.
Yep.
Okay, so Zoom, unstable Zoom. All right. Stu. Okay, man, this is gonna be it's gonna be clunkier than I thought. I practiced this, guys. I promise you, I practiced it. All right, so look, let's do this. So we talked about the community. Basically, the idea is that anybody can go in there, ask any question. I'm going to be there to answer questions. I encourage you guys all to be in there and both ask and answer questions as you see fit. There's all level of people all the way from beginning their career to seasoned guys like me and Russell seasoned, and so guys like us will be there. Although I'm not committing Russell to answering any questions, but anyways, you guys get it. So, all right. Let's see here. Okay, so let's talk about the learning framework a little bit. So I'm gonna play this video while I talk. Hopefully, you guys will see this okay. But the idea about the learning framework is this. Can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So at the bottom, I always think about learning real estate development in a framework, right? And I call it the learning framework. And the idea came when I first started learning the business and then becoming seasoned and then teaching people how to be real estate developers, that there was this weird dichotomy of learning the business where basically when you were a project manager, assistant project manager, you got hired at a real estate development company, you were assigned to a project, and there was never a perfect time to enter a project. In other words, when you were hired, you were launched into a project and you might get assigned a project that's completing construction. Maybe it's selling, it's at the end, or maybe it's at the beginning, hey, go find some land, or anything in between on this spectrum of different action items. And So the idea is basically that as you learn each item, you're going to fill in a piece of the framework, right? So in other words, if you learn how to underwrite, that's an item that you learn. And then you learn, lease up, and then you learn land ac, and it'll all be out of order. But the idea is to basically fill out this framework, like you saw the visual I have here, this animation. And in fact, you'll learn those, in the beginning, that's the first line. And then you'll start to deepen your knowledge in each category, such that, by the time that you filled out the framework, both in, breadth, across the board, all items, and depth, how deep you learn each item, that this would then become a fundamental, framework of your knowledge of being a real estate developer. And so, like, I would argue that unless and until you learn these things fundamentally, meaning that when I say fundamental, that each of these items is applicable to any and every specific project, right? Maybe you might say lease up, you could put sale if you're doing for sale product, but the idea is that you could approach any new project, any land, any existing project, anything in real estate development, even domestically and internationally, and that you will have to take care of each of these items in generally in the order, right? They go from left to right. This is the ordering of the project, right? You go through, and I know these things are staggered a little bit, but the idea is that, you would basically understand that this is like a linear process. You go through this from left to right. Strategies, the beginning, and the sale or permanent loan on a hold would be basically the long-term basis and the end of that process. And then it would throw it into asset management if you were to hold it long-term. So I just present this to you guys because today we're going to talk about strategy, and that's the first one in this learning framework. And it's fundamental to all projects that you should, and I'm not saying everybody does. And in fact, Braden, who's joined us now, this conversation initiated from, his, just asking him what he was doing. He was going to do a medical office. Noah, you talked about doing affordable housing in New York. And I remember that. I think you and I, went back and forth a little bit, either on Twitter or somewhere else.
Yep.
And so the understanding of strategy is the beginning of the process. And a lot of people miss it. It's a missing or incomplete part of the real estate development process. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. So there's this real nice guy I met at Reconvene last year. I think it was the last day, when you talked route, and basically he indicated that he wanted to, start being a real estate developer. He was going to start with a podium project. And I advised him, I said, well, like, tell me about the project. Like, what do you know about it? Tell me about it. And then I also asked him, like, what's your experience level in doing podium projects? And he said 0. He was honest with me. And I said, here's my advice to you. I wouldn't start your first project with a podium project. That's that's seasoned expert only space. And so therefore I advised him to change his strategy. He wanted to be in the residential space. He wanted to be in the geography where he was based, which is back east, as I recall. But I advised him to start like on a smaller basis, like find a single family home that's a new build that, maybe do a duplex or a few duplexes, do some, tri, quad. And then once you get, several deals under your belt, you understand how the entirety of the development process works. Only then could you then move up, the chain of complexity of project types, and then start to do, something that it was, more intense and complex and required a deeper fundamental knowledge. I also advise them, if you want to do podiums, strategic fundamental knowledge already, and then you can basically, tag off of them, right? You can use their knowledge to, advance the project and not necessarily, work. Sorry. Still more crazy stuff going on here. Sorry for the camera, guys. So anyways, all right, well, let's jump into it. So go back to the classroom, and then let's jump into it. So what I've done here, and this is probably the most robust section of the learning platform, is this ebook series, and it's not complete. And it will be complete over the next, let's say several weeks to, 2 or 3 months. But the idea is that like everything that I've written about the real estate development process that's applicable to this fundamental framework, I'm going to put in here. In fact, I'm going to order them. You can see at the top, strategy and strategic planning. We're going to talk about that today. Land acquisition comes next, as you guys recollect on that linear framework. But that you'll get like a bunch more stuff coming. So, all right, let's jump into real estate development strategy. Okay. Can you guys see that okay? The ebook? Cool. Okay. So look, the idea is this. Strategic planning is one of those sexy words that everybody talks about, and people that are, like have gone into advanced education and, higher level corporate world, they use this, word strategy and strategic quite often. But I want to basically boil it down to like a fundamental way of thinking about it. And that a strategic plan or a strategy is really nothing more than an action plan. Okay. And so what I have given you here, and this ebook will be posted. It's already posted. In fact, you guys can go, later, come back to this. So it'll be there waiting for you guys. But, it's an action plan. So a plan of action. So you've planned this process out, and using what I call a sequence of tactics. And tactics are nothing more than individual actions. And in fact, you could call each of those items that was on the learning framework, that's a tactic. So strategic planning is a tactic, land acquisition, underwriting, right? Design, entitlements, those are all tactics within an overall real estate development strategy, right? So we think that, and by the way, strategies stack. You can have a high level strategy. And as we get into this document, you see how that looks. Highest level for yourself, for your family, your own ambitions, for your company, then your like region, and then your specific project. And each of those has its own strategic plan. And so again, I'm teaching this fundamentally, right? So in other words, every action that needs to be completed to fulfill an objective, right? To complete a project, to make money, to take care of your life and take care of your family, all has component parts of things that you need to do, tactics and actions that you need to undertake to, complete that effectively and have it be a win, right? Because you can have bad strategy or no strategy, missing, flawed, incomplete strategy, and that's still a strategic plan, but it's a weak or incomplete one. And so that the objective and the results will be weak also, right? Meaning you do a project and, you did your podium project like this guy at Reconvene, and he was way over his head on construction, and then the project fails because he doesn't know how to hire the right architect and GC to complete it, doesn't know that market, right? That would be a flawed plan, in that description. So, it's particularly for Noah, and Francis has joined us, and Braden, you guys have like, communicate that I want to undertake, that it's, it's affordable housing in New York, or it's medical office is what Braden has described. Sorry, dealing with the camera again, guys. Sheesh. Okay. All right. So step one is to design your strategy, right? And you design your strategy for yourself, for your family, for your business, and then for your projects. Now, so some people may go, well, I don't have a real estate development business, but I want to take projects. That's fine, right? You can JV a project, and that's one of the tactics that we'll talk about later. So again, action plan. And then let's talk about what the 5 properties of a competitive strategy. And one of the things I want to do, and I haven't put it in the book, but I'm going to revise this, but I basically have been part of a learning network called the AGI network. It's now called the AGI Advantage, founded and run by a guy named Toby Hecht. And what I learned with Toby over many, many years, and still learn with that network, is basically his whole basis and thesis is fundamental knowledge of business, right? I'm teaching you guys fundamental knowledge of real estate development, which is a type of business. And so I just want to basically acknowledge that the source of a lot of this, that you're seeing in here from Toby and comes from the AGI network. And so you guys have awareness of that. So, okay, 5 properties of competitive strategy. And so what you would do is you would look at your strategy, and, look, a strategy is, there's not a standard strategic plan. There's not a right way to do a strategic plan or strategic planning, or a right strategy or wrong strategy. all strategies are valid, but not all are powerful. And what I mean by powerful is I mean strategies that are effective and basically deliver the results that you intend, right? That to me is powerful, meaning it allows you to, be profitable, to gain identity in the marketplace, to complete projects, right? And those all build your identity, and having a more powerful and high value identity is good in the marketplace. In fact, it's one of the most critical things. All right, so the 5 components are complete. So no part of the strategy or action plan is missing, right? So remember I said missing, flawed, weak, or incomplete, because basically anytime any section of it is missing or flawed, then the results will be, the same, missing or flawed or incomplete or weak. And so you need to basically look at a strategic plan or your plan of action, go, is it complete? Now, you guys may say, I don't know strategic planning well enough to know that it's complete, but this document is basically going to lay out what is, in answering some questions at the end, what is a complete strategy. But what I will offer you, this is that learning framework. Go back in there and learn that. That is a complete strategy for real estate development. And so these two things tie together. That's why I wanted the learning framework and the strategic planning to go together, because if you can answer each of those questions, land acquisition, right? What's my land acquisition strategy, right? How do I underwrite that kind of a deal? So if I'm Braden and I want to do medical office, like I have a series of assessments to make. That is my strategy to build medical office complete in the context of the fundamental framework that Scott gave us, plus the strategic planning document, and that you need to be able to address and answer that you have fulfilled and have resources capable to deliver each of those items, right? So basically Noah and Braden have a land acquisition strategy right now, which is like, let's go acquire or develop medical office. And I go, great. What's the rest of it? How do you underwrite them, right? What are the entitlements needed for it? Underwriting is market analysis. Is there a demand for medical office in the market that I want to help in? I know what's doing affordable housing in New York, so I already know the answer to that. Plenty of demand for that in the marketplace. Okay, so all right, complete, and then coherent with realities operations is the second one. Which is basically that you want to make sure that your strategy doesn't go against something that is in basically the world of realities operations and what realities operations means. So let's give you an example. So if you were going to build affordable housing in New York, and your strategic plan had you acquire land at the edge of the island of Manhattan in the water, right? Well, that's not coherent with realities operations. You can't build buildings on water. I mean, you can with stilts, but you guys get what I mean. In other words, there's something fundamentally in the world and in reality that thwarts your ability to do that project, right? And so one of the first things you'll do is you'll make an assessment of your plan and look at all the things that you can think of that are realities operations, and make an assessment whether your strategy and tactics address those or not, right? So another one, let me give you a more real world one, that Noah wants to do affordable housing on a site on the island of Manhattan, but the zoning is commercial office and doesn't allow affordable housing or any kind of housing. Well, that's realities operations, right? You can't do housing on a commercially zoned site, and I'm being very general here. There's exceptions to this rule. And so then you go, part of your strategy is, okay, well, one of my other tactics is entitlements. And so I need to change the zoning on that site to make it feasible for, government zoning code that this project's, allowed and I'm able to complete it, right? So that would be another one, right? So I'll just read this. Every strategy in each of its parts exists in the universe of causes and effects, which can be explained by mechanisms, laws, and principles, right? So zoning law, here's a good example. Said another way, there is no magic and nothing just happens the way we want it to because we want it to. And this is a real key here, because a lot of people, particularly new people getting in the development business, they have fantasies about how their project should work. The young guy at Reconvene, hey, I want to do a podium project. It's available. It's on the market. Gosh, I should buy it. Should I buy it? And my advice was no, because basically he was in a story for him, the conversation, that he basically, this was was like a project that was worthwhile, and he didn't even have an assessment of his own skill set to undertake that kind of a project. And so there's no magic. It wasn't just going to happen magically. In fact, this is often the opposite is true, as people undertake the real estate development projects and they're not seasoned developers, and they expect, or at least intuitively, they think there's a certain amount of just wishful thinking will happen, right? Gosh, the city council will just approve my project because, they, say they need housing, but then the reality of the political environment, Russell's, deals in that domain, says otherwise, right? Certain city council members just go, yeah, like, I don't want housing on that site. And like, no way, ain't going to happen, right? So there's a lot of assessments and gut checking, maybe, is one way to think of it, right? Okay, the third component is effective, right? So, effective just means that basically it produces the outcomes that you intend, right? That your strategy and the tactics and the sequence of tactics within it basically will actually get stuff done, right? So, sometimes people undertake development projects and they'll get stuck at a certain part. So let's use for all developers to get stuck, even seasoned guys like Russell and myself, we get stuck at the time. Part of our skill set is to make the assessments about that situation and the effectiveness of it early, right? So we don't undertake a project that like isn't going to allow us to be effective, or we basically, build component parts or use tools or hire people or hire team members or vendors who can help us then be effective, right? So, remember, nobody's a lone ranger, or shouldn't be a lone ranger, maybe the better way to say it. Working in networks and teams is always going to be more powerful. And there's a lot of people that you can bring on board if you have the resources and the money to pay them, who are really, really good at certain things. Russell's really, really good at the political process. And so, people work with him to like increase effectiveness in the political domain, right? And so the tactics, one of the tactics then would be to hire Russell to work on and lead the political process on your project so that you can be, assured, or at least have the likelihood of probability of success be increased, right? Okay, fourth is strategic, right? Okay, so, should a competitive strategy be strategic? Of course, right? Because you need a coherent plan of action, and the words say an action plan is strategic when it's used to execute, improve, or make a new strategy possible, right? So can a strategy be strategic? Of course, right? Can tactics be strategic? Of course, because they enable, the execution, improvement, or the existence of the plan in the first place, right? And then the last one is really the most important one, and that's competitive. The strategy is competitive when its competitive capabilities, marginal utilities, or outcomes are relatively more important, useful, and worthwhile than those produced by competitors. And this is a real key one, right? Braden, I think you and Noah, you as well, right? When you're working on a specific type of project, you need to really focus on the competitive landscape and your own ability to compete, right? Because maybe medical office is competitive in, Peoria, right? But maybe you as a person, or you as a team, or you as a company don't have the skill set or the networks to undertake that competitively. And then somebody else can come in and buy that site, they can beat you on the price of land because they know medical office better, right? And this is no criticism of anybody's choice of the housing type. I just want you to be mindful, not even mindful. I want you to be critical that you make the assessment of the competitive of your choices, so that you make sure that when you win, it really is a good win, right? Because you could win, right, and with a bad strategy and you make no money. Well, that's not winning, right? As Toby says, when you want to ante at a table, like if you're playing blackjack or poker, you want to ante at a table that when you win, it's really meaningful, right? So you could ante up at the $1 table, and the pot's $50, or you could ante at the $50, ante, and it's, the pot's much bigger, right? As an assessment of like your competitiveness in that space, but also the results of, actually being competitive. Okay. So let me stop there and see what questions you guys have. Anything you're thinking? Okay.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
some of the you're not, no one, none of us are going to have expertise in all of the pillars that you mentioned. And then I was looking at the scale of it up, going up, how deep you have to go. Um, if I'm inclined to quit because I can't get through one of the, not that I would be, but one, and I'm looking at one of the pillars and say, I don't know anything about that.
Right. Yeah. And the question is, what do you do about that?
How deep do I need to go on each of these things before I start?
Yeah. So great question. So the answer to that is enough to be effective. Right. And so each situation, Noah's, yours, Braden's, mine, France, like everybody's going to have a different situation that they're in. And so you need to basically make the assessment. It's really self-reflection, Russell. It's like you got to be honest with yourself about what your capabilities are. And some people on this call may say, I have zero capabilities. And so then you have to work first to gain, this is why I offer the learning framework, because it's a place to start learning the business and then deepening the knowledge. And so there's a terminology that Toby uses called recurrence, recursion, and reciprocation. And these are 3 styles of learning, right? So recurrence would be exactly what you think, right? When you need to memorize a process and understand it, just like, at hand, I know it's this order, but you can sort of list it off. Recursion is up the the lattice work in that framework. Gosh, we're going crazy here today. Bear with me here, guys. Gosh, I may just stop the video. Okay. So then what you need to do is work with networks of people who know the business better than you do. And that could be get an internship, get a mentor, hire a consultant, buy a course, whatever it is that you need to learn. And there's no magic to it. It's just whatever you can get yourself exposed to that is, conveys fundamental knowledge such that you can understand that enough to understand what you don't know. So in other words, Russell, what you're describing is what I call a cognitive blind spot, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so first, then you got to build a base layer of knowledge. What are the fundamental characteristics and components of a real estate development project, right? Then you know all those, and you go, okay, well, I got to underwrite, right? So I got to train, I got to, have somebody help me run pro formas, work for somebody as an internship, learn that, right? And then you sort of deepen that. But it's always going to be with networks of people. And that could be different. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the sort of tactics and strategies of how to do that as we get through further into this document. But it's any way you can deepen that knowledge. And if you assess of yourself that you have a weakness or an incomplete portion of the framework for learning, then you need to find somebody to learn with, find somebody to pair up with. This is why joint ventures are such a great strategy, because you can basically go, hey, I'm Braden, I have a medical office deal. And you wouldn't say this to anybody, but in your head, you go, I understand I need to learn. I need to gain, knowledge in that space. So let me find the best medical office developer in town. I say, got a site. I'd like to do the deal with you. You pay me X or Y or Z from the deal. And I want to basically be in every meeting. I want to read every document. I want to learn. Like you would have that as part of the deal that you cut with that joint venture partner, right? And that you could basically learn and earn while you do at the same time. Now you got to be careful, right? So there's a trust building that's going to take good care of you, right? To make sure that they really do honor the provisions to pay and to teach you, right? So that's part of it. But internships are another great one, right? So if I'm Braden and I want to learn the medical office space, then I go basically, whether pitching a specific deal or not in the JV example, you could do that also, but go, hey, look, I'll work for free. I want to learn the, medical office development business. And so, for free time, I just give me stuff to do. In fact, Francis, who's with us today, basically started as an intern and now is with our company as assistant project manager. and he's grown over, a time period into, a relatively, autonomous in certain parts of the business, where we could just give him stuff to do and he goes and does it. And, Francis and I have never talked about this, but he approached with hey, I want to do a deal and I want to learn. And I'm not probably offered that, Francis, because that's just, what I recollect of it, but that'd be a great example. So Russell, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And if I just add, the partnership route worked for me because just the way my life was structured, I knew I knew what parts I needed, and then that I wasn't going to learn those or trust myself to learn those at a level that I was willing to put significant resources at risk. And I just prefer partners. So that changed my approach, and it was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you may, and I'm assuming from the way you describe, you may want to do every deal that way, right? Like, this could be like a great tool for people who go, hey, I can't do an internship because I got a regular, job that I have to take care of during the day, or I have another business that I have to take care of, like in your case. And you go, great. So, find a deal, figure out how to underwrite, learn how to do that, or at least how to identify good deals. And then, basically bring it to them. And then you don't have to work like daylight hours. You just say, hey, include me on every email, invite me to every meeting. I'll go to every meeting I can. I always, when I train people, I go read every single document that you ever touch in a project, every boring ass legal agreement, title report, soils report, look through all the plans. I mean, you got to dive into everything, because that's, one of the learning tactics is to just sponge every piece of data. The other one I always tell people is if you're in a JV or you're an intern and you get a chance to, be on the phone with an attorney or a title guy or the soils guy, just say, hey, would you mind at the end? I just had a couple questions for you. And then basically learn, right? In fact, you arguably are learning on somebody else's dime, which is, the best kind of learning. But take every opportunity that you can, every little space, every little corner turn, every little document, every little meeting, just, have, one or two questions, like, have a practice of, ending a meeting and don't leave until you got a couple questions that you asked and got answered of anybody who's sitting in there. Everybody in the beginning is a resource for learning. And gosh, I still do that, when it's something relatively obscure, like I'll go like, gosh, I don't know about that. Tell me about that. What happens there? Who does that? And I tend to, where I'm in the stage of my career, a lot of like the who, not how, right? So I'm not so much interested in like how to, clean environmentally impacted sites with leaking underground tanks. I'll ask enough to sort of know what the general, nature of it is. And then if I decide I want to do that, well, then I got, cleanup guys that I have in my networks. I have a group of insurance guys that, write environmental liability policies. They know a bunch of people. And so it's more working, predominantly and first in networks, like who do I know who knows how to do that? Or who do I know who knows that person, et cetera.
On that topic, Scott, curious on the types of personas or people that really are in, that you're dealing with in that network. As we kind of think about building that out, and who we kind of should have kind of in the back pocket, from architects to lenders, contractors, things like that. Just kind of curious if if there's a list or things like that that kind of that are involved in these types of deals. I think that's definitely be helpful as well.
Yeah, I don't have that list. I understand the question. So Braden, you came on a little late. So one of the things you'll do is you go back into the Real Estate Development 101 learning community. And I just added something this morning in the classroom session called the Learning Framework. And take a look at that. And that's really the fundamental answer to your question, because each of the steps, the fundamental steps in a real estate development project. So set your strategy, acquire land, underwrite the deal, entitlements, right? All those have then their subcategories of the people who do that stuff, right? And so the land acquisition mode, you'd have title people, right? You'd have, I would probably put, your soils and your phase one guys that would be in underwriting. But the idea that each step has its associated, vendors and partners and networks, like fundamentally networks, like people who know how to do that kind of stuff. That they happen to always generally the title people are always dealing with land when you're getting ready to acquire it or getting ready to sell it, right? Very rarely do you find them in the middle of construction. Maybe occasionally you need a date down of a title policy for the construction lender, but that's, pretty random. So Braden, why don't you, take a look at that. And then, certainly in the future, I didn't have a plan of specifically coming up with a list of vendors. But that could be something. In fact, let me make a note on that, Braden. Part of talking to you guys on these kind of calls, like I learn what you guys, think you need to and want to learn. Fundamentally, my goal is to basically take somebody from zero knowledge to what I call a minimally competent assistant PM, which is somebody who basically could, understand the totality of the process in its sort of linear version, from A to Z, and then, have then that basic framework to basically, get yourself an internship, get yourself an assistant project manager role. In fact, if you guys go into the community portion of the learning platform, you'll see a couple testimonials. In fact, one is Francis, who's here today, and then another guy, Mike Lanza. And Mike is a perfect example of sort of like what I've been able to take people through in the process, which is, like a certain amount of basic training to then get you launched into what is your next, professional step. If you're not in the development space, or you're either brand new entering, or you're making some sort of a transition from, one domain, maybe real estate adjacent, say construction, into the real estate development space. So Braden, let's keep that on the radar, okay? And I'll make some notes about that. Sound good?
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Good way. Like that framework you said is a good way to think about it as well.
Yeah, take a look at that framework. I think that's so key. That has been super helpful for me. And I've trained, I don't know how many people. I'm sort of up in the 80 plus people that I've trained, interns, assistant PMs, PMs to senior PMs. Like I've trained the whole spectrum of people over the, my 20 plus year career here. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So formulate your offer and narrative, right? And so an offer is, what's your promise to the marketplace for which then you would ask people to pay you. So in a real estate development, your offer is, I'm going to produce a project, whatever kind of real estate development project it is, and I'm going to raise money, I'm going to build it, and I'm going to lease it up. Let's say it's multifamily. And then, basically the offer to the investors, who's the predominant in primary offer of a real estate development project, is to produce yield for them, right? And so what you want to think about is, what's your offer to the marketplace, answer that question, and then apply it to that 5, fundamental component parts of a competitive strategy. How does that fit into that? And particularly number 5, which is how does it compete? Okay. And then answer, why does it make sense from a competitive standpoint? Why does it make sense from the learning framework, the fundamental process of a real estate development project, right? So you're making application to these tools that I'm giving you. The learning framework is a tool, the strategic planning document is a tool, and a tool you use to basically move your strategy forward. That's one of the things. So you got networks, people, right? That's one part of, strategic planning and producing effective action. Tools, right? So learning frameworks, documents, books, software would be tools, computers would be tools, the internet, social media, those are all different forms of tools when you apply them to be producing effective action in your strategy, right? Okay. And then the narrative, basically think of it like it's a story. What's the story of your offer and strategy, right? So I'll give you an example. So our predominant strategy is our urban townhouse project type or archetype, which is a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom townhouse build to rent unit type that we build in, project sizing from, 5 to 200 units. And we'll basically do, those 5-bedroom units. That's like the design that we undertake. And so the narrative of that is that we are intending to serve middle income, multi-generational families in urbanized suburban environments in Southern California, to deliver them cost-effective housing that suits their family lifestyle. So think three, related generations, or, or living in a single household together in a brand new unit, while producing competitive yields to our investors. So in other words, it's, narrative is sort of like the general story. You might think of it like an elevator pitch would be a narrative, right? That'd be a version of a narrative. But why I'm prompting you guys to think about that is because basically you will get asked, right, Braden, when you take that, medical office deal that you found to a medical office developer to do a JV, they're going to go, hey, dude, what's the deal with this? Like, why do I care about this project? Why should I pay attention to it? Why should I consider it to be valuable, or why would I consider it to be a win? And you need to be ready to basically explain to this person or this team or this group or whoever it is. It could include investors, could include the city, right? If you're having to do zoning changes. So to have the story, of your project, defend and like produce action in it. Again, the narrative is another way of producing action, because human beings live in stories. And so when we come together to do business, people want to know, what's the story of this thing? Like, why don't, obviously we've talked strategy this whole time. What is your plan of action to accomplish and fulfill the offer to meet your investors and your objectives in the real estate development offer? So remember, again, our model for UTH is to house multi-gen families in Southern California affordably and coherent with their lifestyle, while producing, yield to our investors. That's the UTH platform strategy. In fact, we have a private equity fund that basically underpins, that whole development effort. But that project has a strategy which has that narrative. The fund has that strategy, that has that narrative. Our company does, right? In fact, part of our job is to align all those narratives and strategies so that they're not, going counteractive to each other, being distraction or taking away resources that could help the primary strategy. And then, ultimately, it comes down to like an ultimate and existential objective for me, right? I need to take care of my family. I want to produce a good life for myself and my family. I want my family to be healthy. I want to basically have money, when I retire in the future. Like, I want to take care of all that kind of stuff. And so those are all served by that underlying, UTH strategy, right? So you can see the steps, right? This, layering of the strategies, they're aligned, or you intend for them to be aligned, and that they produce the results that you intend, and that's a win. And then that starts to, march up the chain of your priorities and your ambitions and your strategies, such that at the end of the day, gosh, I made so much money that, I can do all these great things, and, I can travel, blah, 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 whatever. You guys get it, right? So basically, in fact, that's the next one. Well, before that, often people launch deals without a strategy. I talked about that before. Strategy is a plan of action with specific steps to move you towards an objective and outcome. And so I'm sort of putting this is the bookmark. So in the beginning, we talked about a lot of people. So strategy, Braden, you came late. Strategy is number one in the ordering of the learning framework. Also number one in the ordering of the process of a real estate development project, right? But a lot of people miss it or skip it or ignore it, right? And so I started with, don't do that. And then I'm bookending here and say, people all the time launch strategies. You go like, why are you doing that deal? Well, gosh, it's on the market. I go, not good enough. Like, why should an investor invest? They don't want to hear, well, I found it, and medical office is the highest demand, least supply real estate development project in this local area. And I talked to the local hospital corporations and doctors groups, and they've said they're indicating that they are looking for more space, right? So you get the point. So basically you have the offer, right? The narrative, the story of it, and the strategy of it. And those all work together, by the way. Those all go together, and you don't want to do your deal or do your business or take care of your life with missing any one of those parts. Okay. All right. And then to end, basically it's just a series of questions. So, answering the following questions helps you formulate and build and design your strategy. What's your existential objectives, right? Objectives could be, results, this is the thing you plan to do, what you intend to produce, the results you intend to produce, the outcomes that you want, the objectives, like what are you shooting for, right? And then existential means like myself and my family, you guys, yourselves, families, spouses, kids, parents, right? Brothers, sisters, whoever is in your network of love, right? That you're intending to take care of it, starting first and foremost with yourself, right? Existential objectives, come out of the person, out of yourself, and then, those that you care about, right? Ultimate objectives are sort of like these are sort of, again, I'm showing you the layering here in the questions, right? Ultimate objectives would be not your full existential, but you go, hey, I want to produce, 10 million capital at work by producing, a value in a business that I will basically either keep or sell. And that has projects within it because it's a real estate development and fund management company, right? So those would be ultimate objectives. So it's sort of a step below the existential. And then I just basically say, what are your interim objectives, right? And these could also be thought of as tactics. What are the steps you need to take, the actions you need to take to produce your travel along the, the fulfilling of your objectives, be it, interim, which is more immediate and close by in time, smaller in total size of the effort and the action to be completed, then ultimate, then existential, right? Into your ultimate objective. And then to think about steps towards your, the interim objectives or steps towards your existential and ultimate objectives. What do you intend to achieve with your project? You guys would be surprised. A lot of people can't defend the reason why they think this is a good project and what they intend with it. Like, what do you want to do with this thing? I want to build a medical office deal. And Braden, I don't mean to pick on you, but we're here, from your original, outreach. So I mean, use you as the guinea pig. But you have without intentions, which is, a reason why you're doing this thing, then we got nothing, right? Like if I don't intend to produce a successful project, then I'm not intending to produce a project at all. Or maybe I'm intending by default to produce an ineffective, weak, incomplete, and unsuccessful project, right? And then some more like practical stuff. What location or geographic area and why, right? I got and then I'll move to the next one. I'll sort of answer these two questions in a story. What product type and why? So, I do consulting for real estate developers and commercial businesses that need, development help that aren't developers themselves. And a guy brought me a deal. It was a multifamily deal somewhere back east. I want to actually maybe like North Carolina, South Carolina. And I remember like helping the guy, and I was looking at the plans, and I was sort of like, well, tell me, like, what's your plan? What do you intend to do? And one of the things he disclosed to me was that let's say it's a 100-unit project. I'm not remember all the details. Well, it ends up that every unit was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit plan. They were all exactly the same plan. They were all 2 bedrooms. And I was like, what's up with that? Like, why 2 bedrooms? Like, and I knew, like, I had some understanding, some background about that. He goes, oh, well, I did market research. I go, that's cool. And it ends up that the most available or pervasive unit type in the market is 2-bedroom. And so I made the assumption because everybody else is doing 2 bedrooms that I should do 2 bedrooms as well. And I said, no. In fact, that's the exactly reason, like, at least to think about why not 2 bedrooms. Now, we never got far enough in the deal for him to prove or disprove his logic to me. But I know intuitively, this is sort of where just background and experience in the development, that you don't want as a new developer or as a developer producing new projects to deliver more of what there's the most of. Now, if there's super high demand, then okay, maybe there's a story for that. But if the market turns against you and you're the last project to come into the marketplace with 2-bedroom units, I guarantee you're going to lose, because all those other guys that have 2-bedroom projects that either already exist or ahead of you in the development cycle, they're going to lower rents and they're going to be out, right? So you don't want to basically be in that position. So if the market's really, really good, well, then maybe some logic, but you always have to be under the assumption that the market could reverse or crash. And then now you're swimming in the market with all the other people who have 2 bedrooms. So I go look at what the market is not serving up, right? This is one of the reasons why we do 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom units, guys. I mean, that's unheard of, right? Like people are like, wow, that's crazy. And so we get like a bifurcated reaction. We either get, oh, that's crazy, and it's crazy because there are none of those units because there's no demand for it. That's usually one logic of why you do a particular unit mix in related to demand characteristics. But the other side of that coin is you go, yes, true. We've done our research though, and it ends up that nobody in the development space has ever figured out that the depth of the market for middle income multi-generational families in California is massive. Right. In Southern California alone, we did a study, and this is not me pitching it, but I want you guys to understand the logic and the narrative around it. There's 47,000 units of demand for our style of 5-bedroom unit, right? In even a very narrow band of like 100 to 110% of median income, as I recall, that there's 47,000 units of demand in the 4 counties that make up Southern California. Guys, we barely do like 80,000 a year in California, the whole entire state. Right. I don't even know what the numbers are in Southern California, but the bottom line is that 47,000 units of demand is like a lifetime's worth of work at the production rates that, we can get done in Southern California. Now I'm working on that. In fact, that's part of my strategy, is to build a company, now building a fund platform, which is now complete and has a fund in place, and we're doing more funds. In fact, I want to take this national, because not only is this a California issue of middle income families that need housing, but it's a national problem in every major metro area across the United States. Like affordable rental housing is, in deeply supply constrained, mode. Okay. So
question I have for you on that, on the why, picking location, geography, and doing that research, just curious on, places to go to get some of that data, and, how you start even going about doing market analysis and formulating your strategy.
Yeah. Well, for you, like, I don't know the medical office space. That's not my that's not my bailiwick. But and let's see. So for you,
or even not even maybe medical specific, but just curious on, how you went about maybe that type of study, and just kind of the thought process behind it. And
yeah, I got you. Okay. I'll try not to like go, long in the answer, but I basically have a background in both affordable housing and what I call market rate, which you guys would just, see as normal, luxury, A-class multifamily development, right? I've like traveled in both worlds for many, many years. And so in a 2016, 2017, we assessed that the market for podium projects in Southern California was overdone. Like a lot of people were doing those, and we didn't want to do those anymore. So we started to look around for a product that we could do that was contrarian or a niche or like uncommon, had marginal utility and value. I mean, it was something that everyone else wasn't doing, right? And so the answer, Braden, is I had the background of both those worlds, where I started to formulate a product. I go, oh, maybe there's a space for us to be in the middle, right? You got luxury on one side, you got true affordable on the other side. What about all these people in between that make too much money? They make too much money to afford the affordable. They don't income qualify. On the other end of it, they don't want to live in the sexy high-rise 1-bedroom in downtown LA. Like they're a family of 6, and they don't want that life, and they can't afford that life. And there's no units that are coherent with their family lifestyle. So almost sort of by deduction, but also background, I saw the space of possibility for that, right? And then started to dig into that. And by the way, that was like, until we got comfortable with it and completed some projects, it was like a 2-year process, Braden, right? And that's even with all my background in it, but I had to basically research it, be comfortable with it, make financial bets with it, and then build a series of projects to be a proof of concept to then enable us to scale. Now that's pretty in depth, but the first place you start is like, if you had an idea, and let's use medical office as the idea, then you would go build a background for yourself in medical office, find every article that you can, call all the medical office brokers you can, and just say, hey, look, I'm getting buildings. I need some help. Would you be open to just answering a couple questions that take 10 minutes, right? And then you meet and build a rapport with every broker in town that deals in that kind of investment sales and medical office, land acquisition, brokers for medical office. And by the way, those are all good people to meet for your future too. So you know, sort of making the full move of learning and building networks at the same time, right? But you know, generally, Braden, the idea is, in fact, this is, you know, my purpose of the learning platform is to start to build, you know, this fundamental knowledge for people. And then we're going to make some offers in the future, you know, for people who want to, you know, get into, you know, higher level of learning. We're not ready for that yet, but we're going to have a, you know, sort of curated, you know, full offer for people who want to basically advance more quickly. And I'm not going to talk about that today. That's not my intention, but anyway, so I don't, Brandon, I don't feel like that answers your question fully, because there's, you know, I could go on for hours. But what do you think,
I
Brandon?
think I can definitely follow up on that. You know, just kind of curious on the data analysis piece too, because that's something I enjoy a lot. So just actually getting into the data piece. So I can definitely follow up with you on that.
Yeah, and so because like, my primary intention is to teach fundamentally, right? And then there's the specific, you know, situations or geographies or product type that you're describing. And so my intention is to arm you, you know, people like yourself with the tools to then go do that work. Like I wouldn't, you know, say, hey, go to the medical office, you know, real estate journal, but I bet you there is one, right?
Right.
And so, you know, it's sort of, you know, giving you the fundamental knowledge and tactics and strategies and tools that can then enable you to then delve further into your, because there's fundamental knowledge, which is knowledge that underlies every type of deal, every type of location, every, you know, geography, every product type, every income category, right? And then there's specific knowledge, and you go, oh, I'm going to learn about medical office in this region, you know, et cetera, right? And so I won't teach you specifics about medical office. That's not my intention. But what I will do is teach you, you know, fundamental capabilities of how to then go further into that, which includes, by the way, things like we talked about, like meeting people. You know, one of the things people go is, hey, I'm going to, you know, go on the internet and do the research. And I go, great. And then call every broker. I promise you, you know, they'll probably, half of them will hang up on because you said you're new, right? Because you're not a candidate to buy their land, or, you know, you don't have a medical office building to sell, but some people will talk to you. And in fact, part of, you know, the fundamental knowledge is, you know, how to have a conversation with people to encourage them to, you know, enable you to learn, you know, producing some value in return. So, all right, well, let's finish here. You know, what product type and why, and I just, you know, list the, you know, again, the fundamental, you know, product types, nothing special about those, just sort of a list of it. And then, you know, what unit mix and why, and that's sort of back to that story that I told you. And that could be, and again, that's a fundamental piece of knowledge that could apply to office space, that could apply to medical office, retail, right? Hotels, right? Multifamily, right? Almost any product, industrial, right? All of those will have some basis for analysis of the unit mix and why that unit mix, right? That's based on, you know, grounded assessments, right? Like you really did the work, Braden. You went and researched medical office in XYZ location, and you determined from talking with brokers that, you know, medical office suites with 500 square foot, whatever, I'm making this up, but you get the point, right? Like that. And if you went, you know, 2 states over, well, doctors in that location don't like 500 feet, they like 300 feet, or they like 1,000 feet, whatever, right? You get that point. So, okay, well, listen, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Sorry for all the camera craziness, but Noah and Braden and Jags, Econe, or Francis, any questions? Happy to stay on for a few more minutes if you got anything.
Could you just real quick explain again the difference between the existential objectives and the ultimate objectives?
Yeah, so existential is like your existence, like your own person. So how to put it in a different way? So it's for yourself, what you determine is supportive and valuable for your entire existence. Like if, you know, you could say, you know, like for me, I'll give you an example. So for me, my existential purpose, so there's an objective, what I want to achieve existentially, but then there's also purpose. Like what's the purpose of my existence is my family, right? My wife, who I've been married to for 25 years. I have 3 kids, 2 in college and 1 about to graduate high school. Like I work for them, like almost everything I do is to like enable them to have a better life. You know, I want a better life too with them, but that's like like my family is my existential purpose. And that's just mine, right? And there is no right or wrong, you know, there's all are, you know, valid, and, you know, everybody's is their own, right? There's no right or wrong answer. And then ultimate would just be sort of the next level down, like what serves the existential purpose or objective, right? And so for me, my ultimate objective is to create value in our real estate development and fund management company of X, you know, dollars at some point, you know, within 10 years in the future, right? By the time I'm a certain age, I want to produce this certain objective of value in the company, plus my own personal, you know, net worth, right? Like I have objectives that serve the existential objective, right? And then you go down the next level. What are the interim, you know, tactics and strategies to serve that? Like, how do I build the company? Well, I raise private equity funds and I invest in real estate development projects that serve multi-generational middle income families in Southern California and then ultimately in the United States. Right. That's not necessarily an ultimate objective. So the definition isn't like, you know, and again, no, my purpose isn't to say like, gosh, the ultimate objective is exactly this. Like, you know, the stuff from Toby, he does have definitions of these, which I'm not sharing today. That's not the purpose. If you want to go to Aji Advantage, Aji.com, you know, there's a, you know, ability to go, you know, find out more about that there. I would certainly encourage you guys. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, let me do this. Let me leave you guys with some other stuff to research and read. Go to Aji.com. I certainly encourage that. That's fundamental business learning. And then look up a book called The Blue Ocean Strategy. And I would highly recommend that, because while I've taught you guys, you know, at least the initial fundamental components of strategic planning, what I haven't delved into is strategic planning in the context of innovation and competitiveness, right? So in other words, you want to build that powerful strategy that competes well. And a lot of time competing well means you're creating new structures and new offers and narratives in the marketplace that are differentiated from everyone else. So they're attractive to have people purchase it or invest in it. And the Blue Ocean Strategy is an amazing, you know, it's a book and you can get Audible with describing this concept of Blue Ocean Strategy, which is creating an innovative strategy that's not like everybody else, or at least it's differentiated enough to be competitive and valuable in the marketplace. And, you know, I use the term marginal utility in here. I didn't say what that was, but when you compete with your offer in the marketplace, you want to produce marginal utility and value. And that's that little extra thing on the margin of your offer that produces a more attractive, you know, basis for people accepting your offer to pay you, right? Or to invest with you or to rent with you, right? And you only have to create just a little bit of extra differentiation. That's the marginal utility, meaning the usefulness of it, which also produces the marginal value, which is the value of that extra, right? You always want to be competing on the margins. And I'll give you a different example that's the opposite. You wouldn't want to go in and build a 300 unit apartment building right next to Trammell Crow in Dallas, because Trammell Crow owns Dallas. They built more of, you know, multifamily in Dallas than anybody on earth. They're also well capitalized to the tune of, you know, multi-billions. They have a cheaper cost of capital. They got crazy teams. They got crazy political connections. That would be basically competing at the core of that marketplace, and you're going to get killed there, right? You can't compete unless you're the Trammell Crows of the world. And then, yeah, are there people that compete in this space? For sure. But I would argue right now, if you're the small or mid-sized guy and you're in Dallas and Trammell Crow's next to you, I promise you Trammell Crow's kicking your ass on rents, and you're probably suffering for it. And so there's the logic of why you don't compete at the core. And so that's why you start to think about, you know, competing on the periphery, where you can create extra value at the outside of the periphery or margin of the offer. And Blue Ocean's, you know, Blue Ocean can be, you know, create a brand new product category that nobody's ever heard of, right? Or it can be an extension of an existing business that's differentiating. So the example used in the book is, you know, we got the classics, Barnum and Bailey, you know, if they're, you know, we've all been there. But then Cirque du Soleil came out and create a brand new offer in that marketplace that has all the characteristics, or many of the characteristics, of a circus in a tent with high wire act, but they did it in such a unique and novel and new way that they could basically both compete against Barnum and Bailey and beat them, but also attract new clients that don't normally go to the circus. That's the example used in the book. And so that would be an extension. It was a, mature industry. I mean, dying even. The circus business was dying, not long for this world, and probably still is, but Cirque du Soleil was able to, create huge value out of a marketplace that probably objectively people will look at as not a place to compete, like at all. And so our UTH offer is also that we did, we created a product that was unheard of. I mean, no one's done 5-bedroom rental units with a garage on the ground floor and serving multi-gen middle income families. That's totally unique and novel. Eventually people will pick up on it, successful, and come compete with us. And so that it just encourages me and requires me to continue to innovate and, create new offers and, think, continually at the margins and create new utility, new value there. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Braden, for being the reason why we're here.
Of course, this has been great.
All right, guys. Great. Well, listen,
Thanks, Scott.
everybody have a great rest of the week. Thank you all.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.